Today on Conversations Aloud, we're discussing the impact of immigration, asylum seekers to the Western world. It's a big subject at the moment, and it's the number one topic that I see in politics today. We're joined by Andy Semotiuk, who is an immigration lawyer based in Canada. He's a prolific writer and speaker on really a variety of topics. He's also served as the United Nations correspondent, amplifying voices on immigration and human rights, and is a Forbes writer. Andy, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you. Good topic.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Andy, it seems like you've been in the immigration game for a while now. Do you feel the conversation around immigration and human rights has changed? Or are people's concerns on the subject always been at this level we're seeing today and it's just amplified by social media and the news?
It's been a massive change, massive over the years. I would say, let's say in the last 10 years, it's really picked up to become the number one subject, really politically and in law. When I went to law school, I'm a dinosaur, when I went to law school like 50 years ago, the big topic was income taxes. And we were all, or at least I was, terrorized by having to take a course in income taxes. I thought, oh my gosh, this is so complicated. And immigration has just accelerated and become, I did not know when I was getting into immigration that one day it would be this important as it has become. It was not a choice of mine to take the number one topic and,
Yeah.
get involved with it. I got involved because of my family's immigrant background, but massive changes. And as you point out today, it's the number one topic.
Interesting. And why do you feel immigration is now the number one topic in politics?
Very simple. Over time, the number of displaced persons in the world has been growing exponentially. So today, for example, there are over 100 million people in the world who are displaced, meaning uprooted and carried away to somewhere else with no place to call their home. Over 100 million.
And just sorry to cut, is that 100 million, does that include people displaced in their own country or outside of their country?
Also including people in their own country. But
Okay.
a great number, probably majority of it is, I think it's over 50 million refugees in the world today. There are refugee camps with over 1 million people living in them, in the Far East and in the Middle East. Over 1 million people in a refugee camp. Can you imagine? Like that's like essentially a city. And they've been there for like decades. No place to go, no place to go. I have a friend who's Ethiopian and who became a lawyer here in Toronto, who was a refugee and lived in a refugee camp for 12 years before he was lucky enough to get accepted in an immigrant program to come to Canada. And today, his name is Tekla. He's a refugee lawyer in Toronto. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. So there is a lot of refugees. The numbers are increasing, and most people haven't seen what it would be like to live in a decade in a refugee camp. It could be a very dire situation, very difficult situation, and sometimes now we're seeing people born into refugee camps. So it's kind of going through it's generational. Why is there such an increase? Is it due to an increase in war? That's the main trigger?
Well, there are several factors going on. Climate change is one. People's land that was arable at one time is no longer arable. War, diseases, escaping from health issues. Economic disparity is I would say, main driver and the reason why people are on the move and abandoning where they were and trying to find a place that would be better. Massive disparities in wealth, In the North American context, for example, someone, let's say from Honduras, has to face a dilemma where if he comes to the United States, whether legally or illegally, he can earn, let's say, $20 an hour. But if he stays in Honduras, he will earn, let's say, $2 an hour. That's a massive incentive to put the people on the move, try and move into the United States, for example. Um, a better life, especially for family, like a major motivation for people often is, oh, I have children. I want them to have a better life. I want them to have the best that can be, found in life. So in some instances, it's, say, businessmen or investors or whatever who tell me this or explain to me that this is their motivation and want their kids to go to Harvard, Yale, Oxford, colleges like that. But
Mm,
that's a motivation for even the poorest of the poor. They want their kids to have a better life. So there are
yes.
a lot of, shall we say, causes for the increased interest and importance of immigration.
Yes, 100%. And I think it's interesting you mentioned there climate change because we don't associate climate change with displacement that much. But it's true that there's a lot of places where the land can be leveraged as it used to be leveraged, which is pushing people further to different places that they would not call their home. One thing that's interesting in this conversation, in this debate, is this line between economic migrant and an asylum seeker.
Right.
And people usually either say they're all economic migrants, and very rarely do we see actual asylum seekers. And the argument that is put forward a lot of times is that, for people, I live in the UK, and we're seeing a lot of these kind of boat crossings now. The numbers are about 50,000 of people come a year through this kind of illegal route. Um, and a lot of people say, well, are they asylum seekers if they are coming from France, which is a safe country, that provides certain levels of security and opportunity there? How do we how do we categorize those people coming across? Is there kind of like a standard, or do we consider actually they are coming here just for opportunity, which means they're more economic migrants?
Well, you're touching on a good topic, which is the categories that we're using to deal with migrants. In my mind, are not they're outdated, and to deal with this massive migration of people by categorizing those that are acceptable as refugees misses the point and is not really addressing the issues that exist today. Refugee, generally the definition of a refugee is someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution based on certain acceptable grounds, political opinion, religion, race, and so on.
Where they're coming from?
Increasingly, climate change has been apparently a ground that they're willing to consider in refugee hearings. But I think there's a need for a broader conceptual framework to deal with these people. And the framework I favor, it comes from the origins of it come from the end of World War II, when at the end of World War II, there were millions of migrants in Europe that were displaced because of the war. I think it was 6 or 7 million of them. And something had to be done with these people. They could not go back to where they came from because of persecution or, because the war destroyed everything or whatever. And the Allied countries came up with this formula, this Displaced Persons Act in the United States, for example, where these people could be sponsored to come to the countries that were willing to accept migrants. So the United States, Canada, Australia, Britain was there, France, Germany, Argentina, countries like this. But the basic gist of what was going on was they said, let's find sponsors. And if the sponsors are ready to take on the responsibility of helping these people, then we will allow these migrants to go to live in the country where the sponsor is offering help. So in the case of my family, for example, my aunt moved to Los Angeles. She was in a displaced persons camp, I think in Austria. And she got to Los Angeles because a Catholic organization or society decided they're going to sponsor a European refugee, and she was that person. And so they sponsored her to come to Los Angeles. My uncle, Emil, that was my aunt Helen, who married my uncle Emil. Emil was also sponsored, interestingly, by the U.S. Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, because he was helping them at the end of the war in Europe. And so he came to Houston. Those were two examples. And the same is true for my own closer family. My mother came to Canada because my father sponsored her. He was a farmer in Western Canada, and he sent a sponsorship, and she came to come and live with him.
Sorry,
So,
Andy, just on that, when you say sponsorship, is that a statement plus a financial sponsorship, or what do you mean by sponsorship exactly?
well, in terms of what I would suggest as a framework for dealing with migrants, I would think that a sponsorship, in the old days, it was usually, say, filing an affidavit of support, laying out, who you are and what you do for a living, what your financial state is, and that you want to sponsor someone, something along that line. But in modern day times, sponsorship, in my view, now these could be sponsors not only by way of family, but they can be by way of profession. For example, engineers sponsoring engineers. They could be
Mm.
religious, like in the case of my aunt, where a religious group sponsors someone of the same faith. They can be ethnic, Koreans sponsoring Koreans because they're of the same ethnic group. Whatever the category, you'd have to lay out some criteria. Now, in modern day times, one criterion that they want to consider is the sponsor, does the sponsor have a criminal record? Is he a pedophile? Is he, some kind of wacko? So you need some kind of a clearance on that level so that an immigrant coming in is not becomes a victim of, uh, uh, trafficking or whatever it is. So you do need a kind of a pre-clearance, which was not the case back at the end of World War II. But the best one we can come up with, in my view, is based on sponsorship, so that when immigrants come to Canada, the United States, UK, wherever it is, they have a connection to someone who is prepared to help them get on their feet and make a living. In my father-in-law's case, as an example, he was sponsored by a company that was doing clearing a forest, and he became a lumberjack. And he came to Canada on a contract. This is very common. They gave, I think it was a 2-year contract that he would have to work as a lumberjack for 2 years, cutting down trees, and thereby pay back the company for the cost of bringing him to Canada. That's a very practical, a good way, in my view, of dealing with migrants. However, the problem is this: no country, no group of countries has the capacity to help 100 million displaced people in the world, even 50 million. If it's refugees, I think it's 56 million or something like that, refugees outside their countries of citizenship. No country in the world can handle 56 million refugees. So the debate goes down this line. Each country has the responsibility to decide that, like the government of each country has the responsibility to decide who they will allow to immigrate and who they will not allow to immigrate into the country, and on what terms. So it's either that or the migrants self-select and come by boat, underwater, under the wall, around the fence or whatever it is, illegally or legally, to arrive at their country of destination. And sadly, the world is in a place where we cannot deal with all the people who need or want to migrate to a better country. So there's heartache in this topic. We're going to have to say no to people who may deserve to come, but because of fortuitous circumstances, were born in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, or somewhere in Latin America, and as a result of their circumstances, may not be able to migrate in an official way, a legal way. Now they can try illegally, and then we have to combat or deal with illegal migration.
Yes, that makes sense. And the whole sponsorship route is a great way to bring people that have a connection, because that's one of the issues sometimes when people come over here. It's difficult. There's kind of already conflict because there's a misunderstanding of how things run and go. And when you have that connection from day one, it really helps. And a lot of kind of the legal way of migration. And when I first came here in the UK, I was sponsored by a company to do a specific job. And I could only do that specific job until I became a British citizen. So the sponsorship is kind of a system that already kind of exists, but I guess applying it to the wider, not just the legal migrants that come for economic opportunities, but to refugees makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And going to the point about that number of people, there's a lot of people that would love to open the doors and bring as many people as we can. But at the same time, there's this issue of the impact it has on the infrastructure and services over here. And that's the debate that we're having today a lot in the UK, is that there is a line where we say too much, it's too much now, because services are going down at a time when we have increasing inequality. So that by itself is causing a lot of issues. And then add more people to the system, services go down. We've had 15 years of austerity where the government's kind of already reducing costs. And I guess that's why people feel very strongly about this, because they feel like people in the country are struggling. And now we're bringing other people, which we understand kind of, it's an awful situation that they've come from. And that's the difficulty for a lot of people.
Let me throw out an illustration of what might be down the road that might kind of crystallize this a little more. As you know, there's a war in Ukraine. By the way, I'm Ukrainian in background. We all come from somewhere, I don't know, Ireland or Mexico or wherever I came. My forefathers came from Ukraine. I was born in Canada, but I'm Ukrainian in background. And so I'm following the war in Ukraine carefully. It's a matter of interest. And there's a projection, I actually wrote about this on Forbes, that if Ukraine loses that war, there's an expectation that there would be about 20 million Ukrainians who would exit the country to flee from Ukraine if Russia were to win that war. When the war started, 12 million people were uprooted, 12 million. And of the 12 million, 6 million exited into Europe. It was a pretty extreme situation. Now, over time, half of those 6 million returned back to Ukraine, thinking, well, somehow we can live with this. But 20 million, imagine 20 million people coming into Europe were Ukraine to lose that war. No country in Europe can handle 20 million refugees. It's a massive, that's just one example of what can happen in the future. We have to pay attention to that war and what's going on there. If for no other reason that we don't want 20 million refugees coming into Europe, And I mean, people generally in UK, for example, has been very helpful in the war. And if you followed the war at all, you'll know that it's been, the Russians have lost over 500,000 people in that war, over 500,000 people, and and Ukraine probably has lost several 100,000 people as well. Can you imagine? Like, that's like just unbelievable. But it seems to be improving, thankfully, because of the help of the Western allies. And we'll see what goes on there. But that's just one example of how things can flip upside down instantly, in 1 second. And of course, the Middle East and what's going on in Gaza and so on. Another example of what could, open up a sudden flood of people headed out. So there are, now, you talked about the internal pressures that a country has to face because there's a flood of people coming in and the infrastructure and so on. And is it unfair to the people who are there and what the burden is? Well, we have the same issue. I work with Pace Law Firm in Toronto, and we're dealing with that all the time as well. Sort of the settlement aspect of bringing in immigrants. And as you point out, my earlier remarks about the outline of what would be a better approach to immigration, this sponsorship, it deals with that issue. That issue, in my view, can be dealt through this by improving the idea of sponsorship or linking sponsorship to anybody who's coming in, other than economic migrants, immigrants who are coming. For example, investors, entrepreneurs, or people like that who are self-sustaining basically, and who offer help to others by offering jobs and so on. So we, as part of our work with immigrants at Pace Law Firm here, we have to sort out these issues of settlement. Language is an important issue in Canada. You have to know either English or French, and if you have family, then you have more likelihood that you'll be accepted as an immigrant, etc. Those are the criteria that are imposed. But basically, at the end of the day, the ruling party or government has to set out the rules by which they want to deal with immigration. And the key idea is you want to favor those who follow the immigrant rules and punish those that do not follow the rules, so that you line up, just to help understand these things a little better. It's important to know that virtually every country, I'm sure in the UK, but just to illustrate, in the United States, each year Congress decides how many people they're going to want to settle in the United States, how many immigrants they want. And the number, historically, it's been about 1,250,000, let's say, is a rough number. So they set that global number for immigration, and then they divide that up by countries. They say, okay, no country can get more than 7% of the global number of immigrants. And you as a migrant are chosen based on where you were born, not on what citizenship you have, but where you were born. So, for example, Indians from India who may be Canadian citizens and want to immigrate to the United States will be disadvantaged by the fact they were born in India in terms of the global number of people per year that will be allocated to Indian-born people in the...
And who sets this allocation?
Congress in the United States allocates green cards, permanent resident status.
Based on where people are born.
Yes. Yeah, that's the way it works. And so, and there's this thing called the visa bulletin where you can see, there's a thing called a priority date that when you file an application, legally that is, you get a date which is a priority date in terms of when your case will be considered by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And there's a thing called the visa bulletin where you can see what priority dates are current at the moment. Who is at the moment in a lineup where it's like going to the movie. You go in a lineup and you're waiting for your turn to get the ticket. So it's a kind of a similar situation here where these people are lined up waiting for permission to enter. And when their number comes up, then their case is processed and they're given a green card. But that's the way the systems work.
And I think that's a really important point because I think sometimes a lot of people forget how much control the government actually has in who it allows in, and to your point, the location of where that's coming from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing and a bad thing in that it's a good thing that governments have control, but the fact that the government has control and people see immigration as an issue and the government's allowing that many people to come in, the people are starting to mistrust the government because they're voting. I mean, I don't know about the US, but in the UK, people have been voting on immigration for a very long time. They put in governments specifically on this note. We've left the European Union. We had Brexit in 2016 on this specific note. Immigration was, I mean, there was other stuff, but immigration was on there. And every time there's an election, this is a big topic. But instead of seeing immigration go down, we're seeing immigration go up.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because in the past 2 years in the UK, we have had net migration of about 1.4 million people over 2 years. And so people are very confused to why that's happening. Is it that we are just addicted to immigration? It kind of is an economic policy that, because I mean, as an immigrant, I see it as something beneficial for the country. Immigrants come, they contribute, they're net contributors. They add so much outside of the economics in terms of culture and kind of connection and other things. But I can also understand the other side where people don't experience that net contribution and they're seeing kind of the numbers coming in and they're seeing that they're voting for something, but they're not being heard. And I just feel like this is going to lead into something very dangerous where there is a population that's growing where they have distrust of the government on this specific topic, even though I see immigration as a positive thing for the UK.
Yeah. I get the concern. Immigration is here to stay. I mean, there's no way you're not going to close the door and say, okay, no more immigration. If for no other reason than just to economically support the state you're in, meaning the economic state you're in, meaning going towards a pension and ultimate retirement and who's going to pay all the taxes needed to pay for your pension, etc. Not to mention economic stability and economic growth, so your life is better because there are, the economy is working well and people are contributing to a vibrant economy, both culturally as well as economically. So there are great benefits to immigration, even if the people who come are not immigrants but are migrants and who have come illegally. It's still possible that such people will contribute positively to the country. There are many examples of people who came illegally to North America, I'm sure in the UK as well, who went on to become, great leaders or contributors to society. So there's always been sort of these two camps. One sort of a camp, let's keep the foreigners out, and the other one, let's welcome the foreigners and let's create a vibrant. In the United States, it's called a melting pot. In Canada, it's called a mosaic. A country where everybody contributes and we take the best from each and share in what they have brought from their homelands, food-wise, culture-wise, music-wise, economic-wise, whatever. That's going to...
Yeah.
Now, as far as the danger is concerned, perhaps part of the danger is the splintering of what people are reading and hearing and watching because of social media and the erosion of national media in favor of these more interest group type media outlets. So, for example, if I'm a liberal, I like to tune into the liberal conversation and hear what they're saying from a liberal point of view. If I'm a conservative, I hang out with my conservative friends and we reinforce each other's prejudices in that way. So, and that comes forward at election time when we're voting along the lines of what our values are. And but in democracy, I guess that's the way things work. It's that's what elections are all about. You put forward your ideas, and hopefully, in the end, whoever gets elected gets a sense of what the country's mood is and what's needed, and governs accordingly. That's the best
Yes.
we can do on that topic.
Yes. No, 100%. And just to what you said there, it's as society, um, the shape of society is changing in terms of the age demographic, which you mentioned there.
Right.
More people are living longer. There's less births and younger generation coming into the workforce. So there to kind of sustain the growth of the economy, but not just the growth of the economy, but actually provide, s- pay in taxes that goes to provide services to the population. You need that influx to happen. And as an economy grows, there's two ways to do it: either be more productive or add numbers. But it seems like with what's happening with the demographics, we need both. Actually, it seems like.
No.
Um, as an immigration lawyer, what are the most significant challenges that you usually encounter in your practice with what either what you encounter or what people encounter in that process of immigration?
Number one issue, both in the US and Canada, and probably in the UK and elsewhere, is processing times. You may qualify for some benefits, such as, let's say, you marry a foreigner and you're trying to sponsor her or him to come to your country. You file the paperwork and you realize, oh, wait a minute, this is taking a long time. And indeed it is. Spousal sponsorships generally take at least a year for the spouse to be able to come and live in the country where she or he is being sponsored. And that's, fast track. That's like pretty good in terms of processing times. Sometimes cases last 5, 6, 10 years before they ultimately resolve and the people come. So that's the number one, I would say. That's all in the background, rarely discussed in the media, rarely dealt with in some because it's housekeeping. It's sort of bureaucracy. There's no sexiness to it. Increased processing. Who cares about that? Like,
Yeah, and does that happen on purpose, just to kind of push people not to come in that route of asylum seeking, or is it just a huge backlog?
no, what's happening is we have a huge appetite relative to the menu that's offered, but in fact, in the kitchen, there's not that many chickens, not that many bacon and eggs
Mm.
and so on to feed every,
Yeah.
So on the end of the receiving end and the people who want people to come, huge appetite. Let's get them all here. Grandmother, grandfather, father, mother, sister, brother, wife, children, friends. Uh, that part, it's all healthy. Very, like the appetite is there, but the capacity, the absorptive capacity of the countries receiving the immigrants is restricted or is limited. Like, just truthfully, would you be willing, for example, to accept, let's say, 5 immigrants into your house to live with you because there's no place for people to live and we have to allocate them? Like, no,
Mm.
I'm happy to have them come, but I don't want to, you know, like I want my lifestyle. I don't want it
Oh,
this,
yeah.
right? Um, so there's a self-interest involved, our self-interest. We want to be left alone and lead a good life, but we're willing to have these people come if they don't disturb our well-being. And it's costly, stay in a hotel overnight, $300. Who's going to pay for it? Oh, you're going to pay your taxes. Well, a little bit, yes, but not too much because, like that. So those are some of the challenges. Um, but I want to just say one other thing, which is I am a part of the immigrant experience, and I gather from our interview, so are you. In my case, I did not immigrate, but my family did. I wrote a book on the immigrant experience called Solomia. This is the book here. And it's about my great aunt, who was a star of opera's golden age.
Hmm.
Now, you
Okay.
think it's a book about opera. Well, it is, but really, in this book, it's a book about our immigrant experience coming to Canada and the United States, our family's immigrant experience, and how she helped us during the war, etc. That's one book. I've written another book called The Promise Kept, also uh, that's on the same topic, the immigrant experience. And there's glorious stories. There are glorious stories to be found in this whole immigration struggle and the effort to improve people's lives, such as like these stories I mentioned here in these books. As part of the reward of being in this field is to be inspired by these courageous people who go to great lengths to somehow improve their lives and become solid, contributing members of society. In the UK, in the United States, in Canada. That's
Yeah.
the positive story, the positive part of the immigrants,
Ye-
fate and story.
Yes. And we'll put the links of the books in
Yeah,
the
I just
bio.
should I've written 5 or published 5 books. Uh, I have a personal website. It's called myworkvisa.com, and there you can find all my books. And I should mention also, I'm with Pace Law Firm, and if anybody needs to reach me, you can go to pacelawfirm.com website and you can find.
Yes, and we'll link that. And just finally, now before we go there, I do agree that the immigrant story is in a lot of instances a beautiful story, where there is a lot of challenges and kind of in a way a growing and evolution that you don't know where this is taking you, but you still kind of go on that road, for maybe not even a better future for yourself, but for the people that will come after you. And it's sometimes a thing that you have to do, you're forced to do, but sometimes it's a sacrifice also that's being made. Um, so I do agree there. We talked about conflicts, Ukraine, Gaza, and I do feel like w- these things are not going to go away. I unfortunately think that they're going to increase. What do you think the future holds for immigration policy in the Western world?
Well, we're going to have to revise our rules. I've talked about what I think would be a suitable alternative to what exists now. I'm not saying you have to abolish refugee law and, dig a hole and put it in a hole. Refugees are still a key element in the immigrant story, and we should continue to use that framework for true refugees, people who are fleeing persecution. A broader uh, story, a broader way of dealing with this issue is tie immigration to sponsorship, because that enables people to come legally and also uh, provides a support for when they arrive and to help them be successful as immigrants. I think that's something we have to uh, broaden our efforts at, and broaden the sort of the framework, the paradigm that's controlling immigration today has to be broader in that way. There are two. Let me just share this sort of intellectual framework on that subject, which is there are two ways of looking at the world. One way is there's a guy named Zig Ziglar, who's a famous speaker in the United States. He used to say, "You can get anything you want in life, so long as you help enough other people get what they want." That's one outlook on life. I believe it's a good one. There's another outlook. And the other outlook is, give me what I want and to hell with everybody else. That's not a very positive outlook. And we're going to have to move more towards this cooperative outlook, which is kind of a restatement of the golden rule, perhaps. Um, and hopefully over time we'll mature a little more and live more peaceful lives. But for the time being, uh, I think immigration is going to be a hot topic for our lifetimes. And
100%.
we'll do our best.
Yes, that's what we can do, our best, really. Andy, it's been great speaking to you. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Again, pacelawfirm.com. If they just look on that website, they can find me there.
Perfect.
Heidi, it was a pleasure to talk to you and to be on your program. Loved it.